What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Bronx Pinstripes Show. Today's episode's a little bit of a different kind of episode. We are not going to specifically talk about the Yankees continuing to beat the Twins, at least after one game in the series. Scott and I will be talking about the Twins series Friday. But today, we've got producer Ilya with us, who is a newly married man, so congratulations to Ilya. And we're going to be... This is a jumping off point from one of the topics we were discussing on the last episode about Cashman's ability to acquire starting pitching and how, the Taillon move looks really good now, but also the fact that the Yankees starting pitching has been the best in Major League Baseball. Other than that one random rogue blog on Fangraphs that projected the Yankees rotation to be the number one in baseball this year, I don't think many experts, quote unquote experts, including you and I, Scott, if you want to categorize us as experts, would have said the Yankees would be the number one rotation. We thought it could be a strength, but not number one, and that's what it's been.
No, I've definitely put myself in the doctor category before I say expert in any other area. But no, it's been unbelievable. It's certainly worth us taking a deeper look. And I think that, when you look at Cashman and the criticism that you have of him and the entire fan base, it always gets placed around starting pitching. That's the one area everybody goes to about the opportunities that he took that didn't work out, or the potential missed opportunities that didn't work out for whatever reason, whether he didn't go after a particular person or wasn't aggressive or, was just outplayed by a different GM. But that's the one area that everybody points to is the starting pitching for Cashman, for sure.
Well, because this is a decade-long odyssey of Brian Cashman trying to find a affordable young stud starting pitcher, right? Like, go back to when he acquired Michael Pineda and then Nathan Eovaldi and then Sonny Gray and then James Paxton and now Jameson Taillon. And it was a lot of failed experiments. Even though we acknowledge the trades on the surface made sense at the time, probably even do them over again because it's not like the Yankees lost out on prospects that have come back to bite them in the ass. But he has shot his shot a number of times trying to acquire that young stud starting pitcher who is still in arbitration that this team can have and get a lot of value out of. And he didn't have success with it. Like, let's just be real. He didn't have success with it.
This conversation is also not just going to be about Cashman shooting his shot, not having success, but also about how the Yankees organization has clearly missed on the starting pitching position. They've hit on other areas when you're looking at what the farm system has produced. There's no doubt they've gotten, they've hit on position players, but starting pitching is one of those areas. You have to go much further back to look at the success that has come up. I mean, going back to the Jabba days. I mean, shit, Manny Benuelos, we just talked about him. He just pitched two innings, two clean innings for the Yankees in 2022. But the Killer Bees were part of it. They didn't work out.
They were failed starters.
A lot of failed starters, a lot of guys that ended up in the bullpen, which, traditionally you see bullpen arms are starting pitchers usually. Did you know that Zach Britton started in the majors I did not know that until I was looking back at his Baseball Reference page.
I remembered that when he first came up with Baltimore.
Yeah, I had forgotten that, or I didn't know it, whatever it was, but I was surprised.
But you're
by
right. Most relief pitchers are the greatest of all time. Mariano Rivera was a failed starting pitcher.
At some point down the road, at some point in your system, you're doing that. But even for the Yankees over the last 20 years, you see it at the major league level. They're not making these transitions in single A. They're making them because they were mishandled and didn't work out in the Bronx in real time.
I think the only one who was like drafted as a reliever, Ilya, if you could do some real time Googling on this, is D-Rob. I think Robertson was always a reliever, never a starter. And obviously he worked out. So as a relief pitcher, but like everyone else is a converted starter because they couldn't crack it as a starter. But this is something, we dating back to our complaints on the Yankees losing in the playoffs in 17, 18, 19. Obviously, you and I had debates on, was it the lack of starting pitching or was it the lack of timely hitting, right? Like, you could honestly blame both. But I always pointed to I mean, look at the fact that the Yankees had to open with Chad Green in Game 6 of the American League Championship Series in 2019. Like, that's not really a great plan in the long run of things. Now, was that out of necessity, or was that out of an organizational belief and philosophy, and this is how we're going to win games? Like, I don't know now. I thought at the time it was out of a belief that the organization had, because it seemed like they were just putting all of their eggs in the bullpen basket. But maybe it was out of necessity because they failed in the starter realm.
Yeah, they did, because they were making, they certainly attempted to solidify the rotation. It just didn't work. And just like you said, like some of these deals that you go back to, a lot of Yankees fans will look at the deals that were made and say, okay, Cashman failed because those deals weren't made. But the large majority, and I've had this conversation on Twitter over the years, and the number one talking point away from the failed trades are the missed opportunities that Cashman, the one that got away. The Cashman was not aggressive enough, or just didn't have whatever he needed to go get a deal to make a guy happen. Everybody said Yankees got the money, go get a deal, make a deal, get the thing done. But you also look into the minor league system. The Yankees minor league system has not been overly great, over the last 10 years for them to be able to build up a type of deal that was warranted for some top flight starters in the past. So you can definitely look both ways. And I do think, ironically enough, that the reason why the Yankees did stumble in the playoffs was because of timely hitting, and their. So I'm actually yelling at Cashman for the makeup of the offense on that side too, because the pitching randomly did enough for them to win, but it wasn't. That was not by design. That was not by plan. That
right.
Ended up being happenstance.
Right, because the plan was acquire Sonny Gray in 2017, have him be a mainstay in the rotation. Acquire James Paxton in 2019, have him be a mainstay in the rotation.
Yep.
And then add it with the fact that you already had Severino, Montgomery at that time, and Tanaka, who was still with the team. Like, that was probably the plan, and obviously Sonny Gray didn't work out and James Paxton didn't work out for various reasons.
And then you sprinkle in all of the injuries that happened.
Yeah.
Severino obviously didn't pitch for multiple years. Tanaka was still effective, but definitely not the same guy.
He was at the downside of his career by that time.
For sure. And that goes into some of the things that we'll talk about here with managing innings and getting guys starting pitching, playing a different role than they are currently playing.
Well, the innings thing, like we were looking up, Ilya was pulling the numbers where it's like, talk about eye test versus nerd test. Scott, I think you agree with me. Our eye tests were like, well, the Yankee starters like have to be going at least a inning more this year than in previous years, because it just like it seems like they are. And I think the numbers are potentially skewed by the fact that the first month of the season they were in ramp up periods and pitchers were not going deep into games. But the Yankees starters have averaged 6 2/3 innings over the last month. That's amazing. When you think about that, this team was routinely getting 4 and 5 inning starts between 2018 and 2020. Routinely 5 inning starts or less.
And that's why also I think that the philosophy and the system was changed. The complete Yankee system and their philosophy around pitching changed. They clearly, when they moved away from Larry Rothschild and went to the Matt Blake era, there was a newfound dependence on analytics for pitching. They were certainly looking at it differently, and you can see that like it's definitely starting to rear its head as the way that they are approaching these starting pitchers and the bullpen as well. That was a very I got a plane going over me. It's very loud, but they have
people are used to it by now. They don't care.
They have a I can't hear. That's the problem, is that I can't hear. I can't hear myself think. But you look at the bullpen dependence and how much they did rely on them, even going back to 2018, 2019. There was a very quick trigger finger. Like they were ready to go. Like at the first sign of problems, they're going to a guy in the bullpen. If that third time around the rotation is coming up, you're getting yanked. And it just seems like that's not the case anymore. And their bullpen is still very good. That didn't change. So what did?
You could argue their bullpen was better then, at least name recognition wise.
Yeah, but there's there's before everybody got hurt this year. I mean, you're still rolling out significant names and effectiveness. I don't give a shit what their names are. The bullpen is extremely effective.
Yeah, but part of the reason the bullpen's been so effective is because they're not at the same workload as they were back in 2019. 2019, the Yankee starters averaged 4 2/3 innings a start.
That's crazy.
Not even 5 full innings.
That's when the quality start gets changed. You're looking, okay, now 4 innings and 3 runs is a quality start.
But it's interesting to think about, like, okay, obviously the talent on the roster is in the starting pitching rotation is better now than it was, but also, like you said, the philosophy has changed, and the decision to move on from Larry Rothschild after the 2019 season and bring in Matt Blake was an organizational decision that we need to change our pitching philosophy. And I think maybe fans, us included, poo-pooed it a little bit because we didn't see any immediate results. But could we could the blame be that it was the 2020 COVID season? And it's kind of unfair to expect Matt Blake and his staff to make meaningful changes in that season. And we're now finally starting to see the changes over the course of 2021 because the rotation was very good for the Yankees in 2021. And now into 2022, where it is absolutely a strength on this team. Like, no questions.
And it's not just the pitching side. I mean, you saw they brought in guy Tanner Swanson, came over from the Twins, who had a different type of philosophy. It was really starting with this you could
argue that is the pitching side though. That's more about receiving.
But that's my point, is that it's not just the pitching coaches. Like they're looking at the catching position and focusing that catching position on defense, on framing, on receiving the ball. So the organizational shift to this philosophy, it went into the catching position, but all the way up and down the minor leagues, and they started implementing more of that analytics base. And that's the thing. You're looking at the advanced metrics on certain guys. We look at missed opportunities, going back to the decision of Lance Lynn and Ja Happ. That's one that you can absolutely look back and say, well, advanced metrics on Lance Lynn were good. They chose the other guy. He got, what'd you say, 3-year, $30 million at Texas? Like, please God, give me that contract back with the new pitching regime, because if to me that's part of the Larry Rothschild era that left the building with that type of bad decision. And maybe that was one of the last straws, seeing what Lance Lynn was doing with Texas and what Jay Happ ended up being. That's got to hurt. That's got to hurt. Brian Cashman's got to look at that and feel pain, because he became a dominant top flight starter in the American League, and they had him. They had the ability to go and get that hot dog smelling beautiful man and lead their rotation, but they chose Jay Happ.
And that kind of goes back to the Sonny Gray thing of when he came over to the Yankees and they did not have the data in the pitching analytics that he was used to in Oakland. He was lost. He was a lost puppy trying to find his way home, and he couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle not having that data. And I don't think that was Lance Lynn's issue, but it was the fact that the Yankees pitching coaches and their staff was behind the times on that, and potentially impacted and caused negative impacts on some of the acquisitions that the Yankees made. Because when you look at Sonny Gray, in the season they acquired him in 2017, he pitched all right for the Yankees. His record wasn't good, 4-7, but in 65 1/3 innings, he had a 3.72 ERA and 59 strikeouts. Like, by no means a dominant number one pitcher, but pretty serviceable. And then in 2018, he was just completely lost. He had a 4.9 ERA and 130 innings pitched. He was useless. And it was in that first full season under the Yankees pitching regime that he got lost. And that's really the thing that I think we should be criticizing Cashman for, because ultimately it's Cashman's baseball operations, right? So it's like anything that happens underneath him in the baseball operations needs the blame needs to go to Cashman, and the credit needs to go to Cashman now. And I think that's what we're doing here.
Well, for the most part,
credit.
For the most part, they're all the Cashman's in charge of the coaches. Larry Rothschild stayed on. That was the overlap. That was the guy that
was
stayed
the
on.
only one to. He's the only one to stay.
Right. And you look back at that decision now, and you know how much of that. Obviously, it wasn't just Rothschild. There was a system in place that was not. This is the same system that had been failing the Yankees for years. With starters that were supposed to be coming up through the system and be the next guy, and just never ever happened. And I mean, Sonny Gray, for as much shit as I give that guy, as much as I'm tied to him, I think it was his usage of the curveball. It was it was increased with Larry Rothschild, and he was vocal.
Larry was big on breaking balls. Larry, the numbers are in here. Under Rothschild, the Yankees only threw the fastball 54% they threw the fastball 54% of the time. Larry Rothschild loved his pitchers throwing off speed.
And when you talk to, I mean, Sonny Gray was definitely, he had mentioned that, he had discussed that about the tick up of I think curveball specifically. I gotta look exactly at those splits, but that was one of the areas he changed his repertoire essentially when he came over, and he could not handle it. It didn't work. So as much shit as I give Sonny Gray, there was definitely, you know, looking back, there was definitely, you know, more to that story and more to blame and why he didn't execute the way that we expected him to execute.
And now the Yankees, I mean, they're only throwing a fastball 56% of the time under Matt Blake. But what are they doing this year? Like, what's the one thing?
The cutter, baby.
The cutter is making a comeback. I feel like every pitcher discovered the cutter this offseason. And you know, cutter is not classified as a regular fastball. But between fastball and cutter, they're throwing a lot more hard stuff.
Yes.
And that's really the takeaway here. Tyon throwing a cutter 14% this year. Last year, he threw it 3.7% of the time. Nestor added a Cortez. Nestor added a Cortez. Nestor Cortez added a cutter back in 2021, and this year his usage of it is up to 39%. It's his most used pitch. Sevy hadn't thrown a cutter in years, and he's throwing a cutter again. Cole, obviously, there was big talk about Cole adding the cutter, and it's his third highest pitch this season. And Monty actually had been throwing a cutter for a couple of years, but again, we're seeing more consistent usage of it out of the starting rotation top to bottom.
And you know, one of the things to me when I hear that is there's a slight tick up on the fastball, but like you mentioned, the hard stuff, there's certainly an increase in what they're throwing. And to me, that's just working off the fastball, right? That's working off the fastball. Same arm slot, same look, same, you know, velocity is similar. It's going to be a little lower, but it's similar. So you have that late action of a cutter rather than the ball, you know, making four seam over the plate. You have that late action with the cutter with a little bit of a dip of velocity, but it's still coming at you hard. It's not enough to be a slider. It's not a breaking ball, and they're working off of that fastball location. And that shit is very difficult as a batter to process that because of the late break. And when you can effectively hit that late break, the cutter grip changes depending on who's holding it. The pressure of your fingers, all of the different things, depending on your arm slot. So the cutter is going to look a little different. I mean, you look at any pitch, even with Holmes, he throws that power sinker. You got to say the word power in front of it because it's coming at 99 miles per hour. Sinkers don't get thrown at 99 miles per hour. It's crazy. It's a downward action two-seamer, but that's what it is. Blake Trinan threw a very similar pitch when he was, you know, he's filthy. He had one of the best sinkers in baseball coming out of the bullpen. So it's a lot of hard stuff with late action, which as a batter, that's just got to drive you insane because it all looks like a fastball.
Batters across the league over the last couple of years have discussed how hard it is to hit the baseball now. Like, we keep blaming various aspects for why batting average is down so much. But I remember Charlie Blackmon had that quote last year when the sticky stuff was happening. He was just like, guys, it's really hard to be a hitter right now. Pitchers across the league are just absolutely filthy. You're talking about 99 mile an hour sinkers. Back in my day, Scott, Greg Maddox's sinker was like 87 miles an hour. Okay. When Ching-Ming Wong was throwing like a 93 mile an hour sinker, we were like, whoa, Wong's got that bowling ball sinker. Now you got Michael King coming out there throwing 97-mile-an-hour sinkers and Clay Holmes throwing 98-mile-an-hour sinkers. It's filthy. But why have they been able to – why have pitchers, not just Yankees pitchers across the league, been able to figure out how to throw these pitches which still move at such high velocities? It's the technology has allowed them to do it. Well, technology has become so precise. They've gotten be able to precisely measure everything and optimize everything that they can do that.
That's the other side of the pitching. That when we were talking about the change in the Yankees organization and their philosophy and the way that they were looking at pitching, everybody thinks obviously the advanced metrics and what you see on a Baseball Reference or whatever website you're looking at, you see those. But that's the other side of it is the technology and the ability to tweak the different pieces of your mechanics and your grip and all the different things, because you can now break it down so precisely with spin rate and pressure of fingers and arm slot. You can get so granular that you can make very impactful changes with little tiny tweaks because of the technology. And that was the other side of it that's fascinating to me, is that it's not just the statistics that are the outcome, but it's the prep and all of the adjustments, the biomechanics that they're doing to get these guys to get those types of results. That shit is fascinating. And that goes back to what is the name of the in Seattle? Oh my gosh, it's losing my brain, where they're specializing in Matt Blake came from this. No, nothing. I'm getting
Matt
blank
Blake
faces.
came from Seattle. No, Matt Blake was working at a community college in Massachusetts.
It's a training camp. It's a training facility.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
My brain is not working. I had a birthday and now
it's not Cressy, right?
No, but it's like Cressy. Cressy. That's another piece of this. You look at Cressy came in and changing the biomechanics and changing the way that they train certainly affects how their
all goes hand in
mechanics are there.
Right. Yeah, and I also see that right now the Yankees are a little bit better than as far as innings per start than last year's leader, which was Oakland at 5 2/3 innings per start. So, but by every metric, however you want to slice it, WAR, FIP, expected stats, ERA, innings per start, like all of the different rate stats, the Yankees, if they're not number one, they're top 3 in the league. And I think it's just, it's interesting to think about, like, why? Because there's no one clear cut answer to, it's Cashman and his decisions. It's all Matt Blake and it's all this. It's obviously everything working in tandem. But like, I just look at these historic trades. Everyone got worse in their second year with the Yankees. It's really amazing when you think about it. Like Pineda, he was hurt at first, and I think that no one really freaked out when Pineda was getting surgery to start his Yankees career in 2012 because Jesus Montero was a joke in Seattle. But when Pineda finally did break in with the Yankees in 2014, he had a 1.89 ERA in 76 innings. And then in his second year, his ERA was terrible. It was 4.8 in 175 innings. He did strike out a lot of batters, but like he just flip-flopped. He was never consistent. Nathan Eovaldi, who you were a huge fan of, he had a 4.20 ERA, nice, with the Yankees in his first year. Went up to 4.76 in his second year. Like all of these guys would have flashes in the pan. I already talked about Sonny Gray. James Paxton. His first full year with the Yankees, I think was a success, aside from the fact that he only threw 150 innings, like he was pretty good. And then the injuries at the end of the season and into 2020, it just derailed anything Paxton had with the Yankees. But so far, Taillon has bucked that trend, and he's been so significantly better this year than in his first year. Aside from one of his worst starts of the season so far last year.
He grinded, man. He grinded
last night, but
he labored through it, but he did it.
But his ERA is 2.73 in 62 innings, and the Yankees win a lot of games that Taillon starts.
The thing about Taillon as well is that he was coming back from injury too, so he was not. You could argue that this is his first full year of feeling, back to normal. I mean, he tweaked his mechanics last year, with where the ball placement was behind his body in his pitching stride, and he's gotten back a couple of times, but like the guy's healthy now. He's in the system for a full year, and you're seeing the benefits of it. It's pretty awesome. And that was a guy that, they could have gotten other people in that, even in the Pittsburgh organization, and they went after Tyone. Like there were opportunities. Musgrove was a guy that, was everybody looked at him like, why didn't Cashman go after him? Why does Cashman always feel that he's got to have a resurrection project? Why does he always have
smarter than everyone else?
Why does he always have to do that? Well, it's working out. And yeah, I mean, you look back at Sonny Gray. And
Musgrove's been filthy though. Musgrove's been amazing.
He also gave up a different level of. There's a different haul to get one of those guys, right? So you look at what Cashman has given up for these guys too, and he really hasn't given up anything. To be honest, he hasn't had a ton to work with that were actually available for him. You could look at Miguel Andujar and Clint Frazier. Those are the two assets probably that could have been used for Garrett Cole back in the day, but also Robbie Ray. They were. I know Clint Frazier was at least in those talks. Those are those are probably the two guys that you could have gotten another significant haul on the pitching side for, and he just never pulled the trigger.
That's why I think that all of those moves that we went through are, while they're not like home runs for the Yankees, they're not looked at as utter disasters because none of the prospects that they gave up have materialized into anything. If even one of those guys in one of those trades became like a 10-year veteran all-star player, I think it would be a lot different tone.
No doubt. I mean, no doubt about it. That's a big deal. That is a big deal. And he didn't give up a ton. He gave up big guys at the moment. In the moment, that was, Justice Sheffield, number one prospect. James Caprillion was a guy that was, he was a first round draft pick, right? I mean, he gave up, significant value for what he did, but for whatever reason, the Yankees felt safe enough to part ways with those guys. And again, like we said, I would probably make those trades, not knowing what I know now. Knowing in that moment and looking back, not knowing that these guys on the minor league side didn't pan out for the opposing team that we traded with, I would make those deals again because they were good gambles. So that's when you look to where did you not make the move? Why did you always go after the guy that was like quasi damaged goods? Because you could say James Paxton was damaged goods. Pineda was not. Pineda was a big young guy that was a heavy hitter. That was a heavy hitter trade, but they valued the pitching side.
As far as like giving up prospects, when we were doing this research, when Ilya was doing this research last night, we were all talking about this segment. You pulled the top 50 prospect list back in 2011 when the Yankees made that Montero for Pineda trade. This list blew me away. Listen to the names on this prospect list: Mike Trout, Jeremy Hellickson, Bryce Harper, Dustin Ackley, Aroldis Chapman, Mike Moustakas, Eric Hosmer, Jesus Montero, Julio Teheran, Michael Pineda, Jacob Turner, Will Myers, Freddie Freeman, Jamison Taillon, Zach Britton, Shelby Miller, Manny Machado, Chris Sale, Brandon Belt, Brett Lowry. Like, of the 28 guys on this list, like more than half of them not only had good major league careers, but like stud major league careers. And the fact that the Yankees were just luckily gave up one of the duds is pretty fortunate.
They got Shelby Miller back too. Shelby Miller's chilling in our system.
That list just blew me away. I had never seen a prospect list like that, because usually you look at a prospect board of 30 prospects. 10 years later, you might recognize like 5 names. You're not going to recognize more than half the names and not just recognize them and be like, oh yeah, all-star, 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 future Hall of Famer.
I mean, no, there's like 4 guys on there that didn't work out. For the most part, if you got to the major leagues and had some semblance of a career, you're kind of checking the box there. But they're all names that beyond casual fans know who they are. It's a wild list. There's no doubt.
So I don't know. What's your takeaway from all of this?
My takeaway from all of this is not only have they completely changed the way that they look at it, but they've advanced it for much, much better. They're looking at the right things. Whatever they're identifying as, the important metrics or the important areas to look for development wise as well. They're developing guys who have come over that didn't have a proven track record. They're bringing guys back from injury, seemingly better, knocking on wood. Their philosophy of finding diamonds in the rough, a la Nestor Cortez, and effectively, allowing these guys to make the changes that they need to be top quality starters. They're doing all of the right things. I'll tell you what I'm looking for as well. I'm looking for like a guy like Domingo Germán coming back here at rehab. I'm curious to see what he's going to be like with being injured, but also being under this regime for a long period of time on a rehab assignment and coming back to see what he is and the type of the pitches that he's going to throw, because we've seen him in spurts be dominant. I mean, he's been a very good pitcher in spurts. And he's not been able to put it all together for long periods of time. So he's a guy that I'm interested to see how he comes back and how his pitching repertoire changes or adjusts.
Do you know what I'm looking at? I mean, obviously what the guys currently on the major league roster or guys we've recently seen, but also how some of the Yankees pitching prospects develop under this new system. Like Ken Waldichuk, right? Had him on the pod. Left-handed starting pitcher. Like under this new regime, does his career blossom versus so many quote unquote prospect pitchers the Yankees have had over the past decade that have just flamed out?
Yeah, guys like that. Clark Schmidt, who's coming back and has looked very good. I mean, you look at your boy Michael King. I mean, become a new guy. He's become a new pitcher, and some of this could be just evolvement or maturity and adjustments but he's making adjustments that are being orchestrated by this regime. You look back and you see the amount of right-handed starting pitching that has had control issues, or relief pitchers that have control issues in the minor league system right now. They went so heavy in the international pool on right-handed pitching, and these guys are the Luis Medias of the world. These guys are throwing, in the high 90s and have had control issues. I'm very curious to see how they're able to kind of reel those guys in. The Luis Heels of the world, unfortunately, he got hurt. He was somebody that I was very excited to watch progress. But man, they have dynamic stuff, and if they can bottle it up, and this this new system allows them to do that at a higher rate, they have a lot of talent in the system right now. So yeah, the young guys are definitely someone to look at.
What about you, Ilya? You're the one who did a lot of this research. What's your takeaway from this?
Yeah, I think you guys have said it. They've really changed it in every aspect, whether it's catching, the coaching, front office with Cashman. I think, I look into a lot of these prospects and there's a lot of similarities between all of them for me. And, I think because of, the past 5-10 years or so, it frightens me initially, but reading about these guys, I think there's something to it. It makes me think there's something going on in this organization. I think, we've heard about whether it's, the Rays or the Dodgers, Padres, these teams that are turning out these starting pitchers. I think
like Cleveland would
the Yankees
have a new ace every year.
Oh
There'd
my
be a new
gosh.
ace coming out of the Cleveland system. Oh, by the way, where did the Yankees pitching coach previously work? Oh, that's right, Cleveland. Okay.
I'd say I think the Yankees have finally figured something out. Knock on wood. But
yeah, I mean, we're all hopeful that they finally figured something out. And I'm with you, man. Like the prospect fatigue was real amongst Yankees fans because so many didn't work out. I mean, obviously some did work out. Aaron Judge turns into one of the best players in the league. Like, okay, that's obvious. But so many other guys, seemingly even when they did make it to the majors, would take steps back. Gary Sanchez, Gleyber Torres, all of that. So there was no reason for us as fans to have faith that they were going to develop these prospects, but maybe now we're seeing that turn,
especially on the pitching side, because of all of the failed I mean, when Jabba came up, we loved Jabba. We everybody loved Jabba. We needed him. We wanted him so badly to be that next guy. Phil Hughes had success. It wasn't sustained, but he had some success, but then also got relegated to the bullpen, and the starting pitching was no more for him. Ian Kennedy, same thing. Like you could go on and on and on with the amount of prospects that they had that just did not work out as a starting pitcher. Luis Severino was like the first one in quite some time that had come up, and then unfortunately we know what happened. He got injured, and now is, you know, through this new regime coming back up, and number one priority for him, which I love, stay healthy because the talent is there, and if they're making the right tweaks to him, you know, I expect him to be a top flight starting pitcher throughout the year if he can stay healthy.
The scary thing is you basically named all of the starting pitchers that the Yankees developed over the past 15 years. It's
but you could go, the Manny Benuelos, Dellin Betances was a starting pitcher that started. Andrew Brackman,
relievers is different, but like guys who were starters and then materialized into starters, like Ching-Ming Wang, Phil Hughes, Luis Severino, Jordan Montgomery.
Even Hughes, though, he became a bullpen piece.
But he did, I don't know, he had a successful... He had a successful starting career in the major leagues. Okay, so like he's a success. Even if he's not the success we all thought he was going to be, he was a success.
Yes. I'd qualify
him. But you count him on one hand. Okay?
Yeah, for sure.
In
absolutely.
20 years. One hand. You can't even fill out a starting five rotation in 20 years.
Manny Benuelos was supposed to be, he was a starting pitcher. Andrew Brackman was a starting pitcher when they were coming up. These guys were starting pitchers coming up.
I know.
So it's, Betances they transitioned him into a reliever in the minor leagues, but he was originally, it's not like he was drafted. Like some of these guys were drafted as starting pitchers and then immediately transitioned over. No, like that happens all the time. They were being developed as starting pitchers, and it just didn't work out. Betances couldn't find the strike zone. Then all of a sudden he went into the bullpen, and magically he found the strike zone. He found his consistency.
Well, he was able to focus on just fastball, curveball.
Yeah, and it was elite.
All right, I guess that's gonna wrap it up. It was just kind of a conversation, a deep dive into a topic that everyone is super interested in right now on this Yankees team as this season is going on. I think we're gonna do more of these as they pop up throughout the season. Hope you guys out there enjoyed it. Again, Scott and I are going to be recording Friday morning after the Minnesota series, so make sure to check that out. Call up the voicemail line at 646-480-0342 and submit your mailbag questions. Also, you know what we haven't done in a while? Push for ratings and reviews. Please go and rate us on whatever podcast platform you're currently listening to. Maybe you're watching us on YouTube. Give it a like, give it a little comment. I don't know, boost the algorithm. Just comment a bunch of times. Just comment algorithm booster in the comments like 50 times or something like that. I don't know, whatever YouTube likes. What were you going to say, Scott?
Someone wrote in talking about the sleeve that Zach Britton is coming. So we'll talk about that in the next episode. But I thought super interesting, just some more details on like how it's coming up. Yeah. So we'll do a follow up on that one. But definitely some interesting technology on the Tommy John side of things.
Sweet. All right, we will talk to you guys on Friday.